Hey guys, it's Sarah and today's BookList Thursday. This is a video series I do with my friend Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library, and every Thursday we bring you some sort of topic or list that we feel like talking about surrounding books. And this week we are talking about books that we've changed our minds about. And we have seen these videos kind of going around the past couple of months where people will talk about, books that they initially read and had thoughts over, but then as time kind of went on and they reflected a little bit more on it, they kind of changed their opinions or changed their thoughts or changed how they felt about them. And so we thought that was very interesting, and we both definitely came up with 5. So we're both going to talk about 5 books and 1 genre that we've changed our minds about. So let's get started. The first one I'd like to talk about is Everything, Everything by Nicola Yoon. And this is a book that I used to own, but I have unhauled it. I unhauled it in my big unhaul that I just recently did. And when I read this book, I read it in a day. So it was a very, very quick read. It's a young adult book. And I gave it 5 stars because I absolutely just devoured it. And I thought it was so great and it was so beautiful and I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. But as time went on and I thought back to it, it's not a forgettable book by any means. I mean, I remember exactly what happened in that book still, and I read this a couple of years ago. But it's still just not a book that I feel was as beautiful as it was when I read it, if that makes any sense at all. I'm not even sure if that makes sense. I think if I read it today, I would be much more critical of it. And I think that I would probably give it a lower rating, like maybe even more like a 3-star, just kind of very middle of the road, didn't love it, but didn't hate it. Next one is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. And this is another one that I read very early on in my BookTube filming. And I gave that one 5 stars as well. However, I have been hearing a lot of feedback from people who have a little bit more experience with what the topic of the book was, which it dealt a lot with suicide. And they were really critical of it and just kind of saying that it wasn't a very healthy depiction of somebody who is suicidal or who have those feelings and stuff. So when I personally read it, I've never been suicidal before, so I can't relate to it on that level at all. So I really would trust somebody who has been through that or who has had those feelings before. I would trust them over me for sure. And yeah, so I think if I read it today, I'd definitely give it a lower rating than 5 stars. But I do remember it did break my heart. So that was legit. It did break my heart, but I don't know that I would give it a 5-star rating today. Now, this next one is a book that continues to get rave. People are obsessed with the entire series. And when I first read it, this is Shatter Me by Tara Mafi. I read Shatter Me a couple of years ago, very early on again in my BookTube. And I was surprised that I liked it so much when I did read it. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did when I read the book. I did give it 4 stars. Upon further distance from it, though, I don't remember a ton about it anymore. And I do remember that even though I like the story overall, I don't like Tara Mafi's writing. It's very flowery. It's very poetic. And I do remember there were certain times where I had to reread sentences a few times to understand what it was saying, because I was like, wait a second, what? And then throughout this book in particular, the main character would have thoughts, and then she would cross them out as in like, I shouldn't be thinking this. Here's what I should be thinking, or here's what I should be saying. And she crosses things out. And that's fine. It was a little bit distracting, but I don't know. I ended up not having any desire to move on to the next books and to read the series at all, even though there are people who are, huge lifelong fans of this series and reread them all the time. I'm not one of those. So I did give it a 4 stars. I think I'd probably restart it if I read it today. Another one that I gave 5 stars when I read it, and I just absolutely loved it, and I was raving about it and blah, 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 and that is The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. And I think the reason I would change this star rating today is because this is just such a big trope of an unreliable character, and she's an alcoholic, and she doesn't know what's true and what's not, and she gets wrapped up in this case, and is she a suspect? Is she a victim? Nobody knows. And you can't rely on her because she's drunk half the time. That's been done so much now that I feel like if I read it today, I would just be like, oh my gosh, another one of these. I'd probably give it a 2 or 3 stars. But when I read it, it was still kind of a new thing. So I did give it 5 stars because it was kind of a new trope for me. And I had never read anything like that before. So that's why I gave it 5 stars when I initially read it. I think if I read it today, I wouldn't like it as much at all. And I would not understand what the hype was. So that's very interesting. It also depends on when you read something. I think I read it at a good time where it was still brand new to me and I hadn't read anything like that before. So it affected me a lot differently than if I had read it today. All right. So this last book is actually The Book Thief by Marcus Cusack. And I have this one physically. The other ones I don't have physically. And this one is interesting because when I first picked this up, I think, I want to say 2012 or 13, something like that. And I tried to read it and I got about a quarter of the way through it and I put it down and DNF'd it because I didn't understand it, I think. And I don't think my head was in the right mind frame. This is also a historical fiction, which I wasn't very comfortable in that genre at all at the time. So there was also that. I was a little bit like, I don't think I'm going to like this, but I was doing it because everyone was telling me to. And I DNF'd it at 25%. I was like, this just isn't for me. Sorry, guys. And I didn't have any desire to pick it back up until I did. I ended up picking this up on audiobook a couple years later, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. But here's the kicker with this one. I still feel like when I read this, when I actually listened to the whole thing all the way through, I still feel like I wasn't super comfortable in the genre. And if I read it today and if I read it physically, I think I would probably give this a 5 stars. Is that weird? It went from a DNF to 4 stars but I think it's still 5 stars. Like if I read it today, I think I would enjoy it so much more. This is a very interesting book for me. I don't know what my relationship with this book is, but it's something, it's something that I still want in my life. I still have it on my shelves, obviously. I got this for 10 cents at a library book sale. It has like the library kind of tape and stuff over here still. So I think it was, a discarded type thing. But yeah, I don't know what it is about this. Just, I still feel like this would be a 5 stars for me. And I just need to give it a 3rd shot. And I don't know why. It's so weird. Okay, that is a really good lead in to what a genre is that I've changed my mind about, because that's historical fiction. I had never been comfortable reading historical fiction. I always had some issues following it, or like a fear that it would be boring because it's set in history and I don't like that stuff and all that. And then I finally started actually reading some historical books. And let me tell you, I was like, what have I been doing with my life? I have loved all of these books. So I'll put some screenshots here of some of my favorites that have really stood out to me in this genre. So I'll just have a little slideshow here going while I talk. But I really found a niche for historical books about World War II. Kind of that little time frame there has been so interesting to me. And I've loved every book that I've picked up that has been set in that time period. And then I've had some that are set in different time periods as well that I have just really enjoyed. And I think it's something that I don't know what it took for it to click with me, but it did finally. And now it's one of my favorite genres, and I pick up historical fictions all the time. And even one of my favorite books of all time, which is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, that's in my top 5 of all-time favorite books. And that's a historical fiction, World War II, set in France. So very interesting. Very, very interesting for that. So I have really changed my mind on that, because that would normally be a genre that I would definitely shy away from. But now it's one that I aim to get as many as I can and to read as many as I can. So definitely changed my mind about that. Okay, guys, that is it for me today. So let me know down below if you guys have any books that you've changed your mind about, or that you feel that if you reread them today that you would have a different opinion on them for whatever reason. I am not going to be going back and changing my star ratings on any of these books, because I rated them for what I felt at the time that I read them. So I'm not going to change anything. If I ever do reread them, I would change it, but I'm not going to do that, because, what I rated it is what I felt at the time. So I'm going to leave that to be the truth. So there is that. But these are things that if I reread them today, I would definitely probably give them a different star rating. But let me know what your answers are down below too. And make sure you go check out Lindsay's channel. I will have her link down below and see which books she has changed her mind about. I'm really excited to see what she has to say about this. And we will talk to you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.